Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the Keeper League podcast. We're the AFL Fantasy podcast that doesn't talk about the superstars. We only talk about the lesser knowns and the players who will bring value to your draft and Keeper League teams. My name's Heff, and today I am joined by former co-host of this show, current host of the Point of Difference podcast, also known as the Pod Pod. Welcome back to studio, Heff. Dossie.
Thanks for having me, mate.
It's a lot easier. Sorry, it's a lot easier with one person here. I know who to throw to this time, not like last year. I had to kind of choose who to throw to first.
It's like my second home, the studio, mate.
Yeah, you haven't been here for a while.
No.
Nostalgic getting back in here?
Oh, absolutely, mate. Just the beautiful bright lights of the studio. That we got the TikToks popping off these days, mate. You're blowing up everywhere, aren't you?
Yeah, trying to. I think the TikTok's actually kind of regressing a little bit. I think we hit our peak last year, but
okay. Don't worry, you've got the content king back to help you with that, mate.
Well, that's it. It's going to pop off this week for sure. There's no doubt about that. But you're here to talk about GWS now. What's the go here? Are you a GWS fan? Why have I got you in?
I don't know. I think you just didn't want me on any of the other pods where I'm biased with maybe a Carlton podcast. There's probably some bias, some Gold Coast. You just want to avoid me tainting your podcast with any of the kind of more relevant teams. But GWS, there's actually a lot of exciting names, I reckon. Looking at the list, a few changes coming in. Obviously a coaching change as well, which we'll talk about. But
sure.
I don't know. It's an exciting team.
Yeah. Like, in all honesty, I could not think of a GWS fan. And I reckon there's like 2 or 3 teams where I just couldn't think of like someone who is like a supporter of that club and like knows fantasy or has some kind of like relevancy in the fantasy world. So
I feel the whole.
UK's Louis, I reckon. Probably a spoiler for the future. Louis might be on.
Yeah.
Hole fillers.
Yeah. Just the sub vest. We've got the vest on. We're coming in to fill those.
People,
All right, sweet. So this will be the lowest listened podcast, and you wanted me on for that one.
Yes, correct.
All right, sweet. Yeah. Thanks, mate.
Just
appreciate it.
Keeping you under wraps.
Beautiful.
Anyways, we'll get stuck into GWS. So they got a new coach, Big Pipes Kingsley. What do you think of his pipes, by the way?
My God, those pipes.
I know you are a big fan of pipes.
Yeah, like Bevo, we've always admired Bevo. He's got that chiseled jaw, the combo, the chiseled jaw followed by the fairly gargantuan pipes. Yeah. But Adam Kingsley's come in, he's taken the crown immediately. He'd be outdoing all of the GWS players right now in the gym. Yeah. And I wonder how much coaching he can really do with the amount of gym time he's getting in.
I want to know how much he has to eat to get pipes that size. It seems impossible. I think you see like people like Stewie G, post footy, they just blow up because they don't hit the gym properly. He must be eating like probably as much as Stewie G, but actually matching it on the gym side, I reckon. But
it's so impressive though. I don't know how he does it, but
how much of this podcast do you reckon we could spend talking about?
Probably the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think it's really... But no, his game plan is going to be very interesting to see how it all shakes out. They had Mark McVeigh take over, what was that, midway through last year or towards the end? And we saw some significant changes straight away, like your Himmelberg's moving into defence. We saw some Perryman action in the midfield. Jacob Hopper came back at the end of last year. He's gone now. Taranto's gone. So there's so many changes to take into account along with a coaching change. So... yeah, how GWS shakes out, the preseason is going to be critical to see what happens. But I'm really interested. He's obviously got that Richmond background coming from there. Are you worried about that at all?
Absolutely. In terms of having
I've
got it in my notes here. That's something I'm thinking. We've seen. Well, you generally get like a fantasy friendly role, like short off the halfback line or something like that when he's playing in the halfback line. So you might see someone like Cummings still go okay. But yeah, I'm kind of worried about what happens in the midfield mainly and the way they kind of play that defensive style. And it's not a lot of, possession footy. It's kind of getting it straight down the line to your key targets and stuff like that. Might not be the same way because they probably don't have the quality of key targets as well. So it might be more possession. But yeah, I'm definitely concerned, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a watch. But I guess a lot of the players we'll probably talk about are guys that maybe could fill those voids of the lacking Taranto and Hopper that go out. So... do you want to talk about maybe? Is that what we're going to get into now, mate?
Well, we've got a new format this preseason, Dossie. So we've been going with the undervalued. So players that kind of perform below where we think the average is going to be this year. Breakout contenders, so guys who fit the mold to break out the season, and some stash options. Some guys that aren't quite there, but we're going to talk about them for maybe future stashes and things that might break out.
I know that. I've been listening along, so I knew that was coming. I just wanted to, I was just bouncing off you.
And I passed, right?
You passed.
Yeah, good. All right, well, talking about some undervalued players, Toby Greene's the first one I want to talk about. So he his worst fantasy return since 2018. Only averaged 74.4 last season. Do you think he has an upside this season, listed as a forward? We know they're scarce. And do you think there's any potential midfield time like the days of old?
God, I hope so, hey. It would be nice to see him back in the guts. He's an absolute freak when he does play midfield. I think if he's ever going to get that chance again, we always talk about it. If he's ever going to get it, it would be now. Coaching change. You're losing two high usage centre bounce guys in Jacob Hopper and Tim Taranto.
Yep.
Look, if they ever need a guy like him in there to fill the void until some of the young guys can come up, it would be this year. So, yeah. But I mean, like you said, even if he just plays that forward role, he can do a lot better than he did last year. And if we do see a Richmond game style from Adam Kingsley coming in, that's conducive of forward players getting more involved because they do like to slingshot it quite forward quickly and then they get involved. So, yeah, plenty of upside. And I mean, it's Toby Greene. We know what he can do.
I think at worst, he goes over 80 plus again this season, at his very worst. As long as he stays on the park, doesn't get suspended, doesn't get injured, I think he should go 80 with ease. That's just Toby Greene. That's what he does year after year. If he can get some midfield time, like who knows what he could go to there. While we're on the topic, who's your gut feel of the Taranto and Hopper? Who are the replacements? So everyone's talking Tom Green. It seems pretty obvious. Do you think anyone else gets more of a go in there?
Well, I mean, Perryman showed that knack to play inside at the end of last year. I think his last few games of the season, he was upwards of, he was getting, mid 80s high or 90s even centre bounce attendances. They really threw him in there to see what he could do.
Yeah.
There was a patch there. I don't know what sort of game. I think it was right at the tail end of last year. And he's shown an ability to do that. Like we saw him leading the Coleman last year early in the season. Was it last year or the year before? But we saw him sort of right up there. He can do a lot of different things. He's got a lot of tricks in his bag, and midfield is one of those things. So
he was playing more like some accountable roles in that midfield as well. And whilst it wasn't the prettiest football, it was still scoring pretty well while he was doing it as well. So
I think the other options you've got, it depends if they go heavy, if they throw big numbers at Kelly in there, Cornelio in there. If they do throw a Toby Greene in there, you've got Perryman. I feel like they could expose Callaghan to some in his second.
He when he did play, he was more on the wing.
He's more a wing, yeah. So I feel like you're right, but he might get a little bit of exposure.
Juniors,
he
was an inside midfielder.
Yep. So if his body's ready to go, I honestly feel like a guy coming across from Melbourne. I think they're going to maybe mix in a few of that speed burst guys. So like whether Toby Bedford gets a little bit of exposure, he's a tackle pressure guy. Do they want to put a bit of pressure in there? I feel like there might be a bit of a mix, a bit of tinkering, a few little trials, and maybe a Lachie Ash as well would be one that we could keep an eye on as well.
We'll talk about Lachie Ash in a second. There's a few guys there actually we'll talk about down the line, but we'll move on right now to Braydon Preuss. So he should be the number one ruck, and if he's fit and remains unsuspended. Seems to be a lot of suspension prone blokes at GWS, but you reckon he's the number one? Flynn doesn't.
Yeah, if he's healthy, but he never is.
Yeah,
he never plays 10 games a year. It's like barely ever does he keep on the park. So yes, he's the number one ruck, but can he keep his body right?
The thing with Preuss in your keeper leagues and your drafts as well, I guess, like people are going to be targeting those top end ruckmen, and people are probably going to go early on ruckman where they're probably going to average at the end of the year, especially when you look at you've got your standouts like English, Rowan Marshall, who are definitely going to be right up there. But people will go probably earlier than they should on Grundy, just not knowing what to expect, or even Gawn as well, because like one of those two will probably they might even both regress quite significantly, but because the names of the past, you could get a real bargain with someone like Preuss, is what I'm trying to say. Like those top kind of line ruckmen will go off the board probably earlier than they should, or the latter two anyway, earlier than they should. Whereas you could be picking him up, if you play a 10-team league, he could be like the 7th or 8th picked ruckman and still average over 80 if he plays each week. So yeah, that's just one. I think there's a bit of value there, that's all. But yeah, again, that big if we talked about before, whether he can stay on the park, that's the issue.
I think that's the problem. When has he ever shown an ability to? We thought it was going to be last year. There's just no way he could play a full season of AFL footy. So yeah, if you do draft him, you've obviously got to go with one of those other guys.
You have to handcuff, have to handcuff Flynn. And even last year, I think we saw both of them injured, and Kieran Briggs took over the mantle as well. So you're going to have to roll pretty deep in your rucks. You're kind of committing to 3 players if you pick.
And I wonder whether they do the old
rotation,
the dual ruck as well, which has been prominent in Richmond with Soldo and Nank over the many years.
Seems to be prominent in the AFL.
It's coming back as a thing, unfortunately.
Yeah, for us fantasy coaches. Bad for the rucks out there. All right, well, we'll move on to some breakout contenders, guys that fit the mold to break out this year. The first one's Tom Green. Do you reckon he just fills that midfield spot?
Yeah, I think he's probably one that I didn't even mention in our long list of midfielders before, and he's the most obvious to take the big leap.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time in the midfield early last year, especially without Hopper in the side, and kind of tailed off a little bit to a point where I think there's still plenty of upside in him, and what he's coming into is like 3rd or 4th year now. So yeah, ready to take that leap for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. What do you think? What's his gut feel average this year? If you're going to put one out there right now, what would it be?
I mean, I think the comparison to like Patrick Cripps is honestly pretty, like, it's the closest you probably get in the league that we see at the moment. And I feel like, early days Patrick Cripps is probably more like the mid-90s guy until you can kind of put it all together and get a few of those marks around the ground. So,
and then you come back to basically being a mid-90s guy for a while.
Yep. So I'd say probably like mid-90s to 100 would be my guess. If he goes over 100, I wouldn't be surprised though.
Yeah, I think in the 90s is probably the most realistic option. But yeah, same deal. Like, given the opportunity he's going to get, there's definitely scope for higher scoring there, that's for sure. The other one is Lachie Ash, fits the mould for a breakout contender. He was thrown around a lot last year. Midfield, defence, a few different roles. Do you think he's a chance of a midfield role with the departures?
I think we spoke about this a lot on the podcast last year, and Kay's was also a big proportion of this, I reckon. Yeah. We just think he needs a consistent role, and hopefully with the new coach, Kingsley, coming in, hopefully he can say, look, because last year he was a tagger, he's a wingman, he's a halfback, like what is he? And I feel like if he just focuses this off-season, if they give him a nice role, whether that's midfield, whether that's halfback, I think he'll thrive regardless. Like, he's just a natural kind of footy player, and I feel this year could be the year for him to break out.
He was used as a bit of a tagger last year, though.
He was,
so that generally is like a lesson learning type thing, though,
exactly.
Especially for someone like Ash. So maybe there is. I guess it's a new coach now, so who knows? But there was, I guess, some potential there for a long term midfield spot. Don't know if it's the case now with the new coach, but he's one to watch. I will add that in the article that will associate this podcast, I just want to let you know Kays wrote the Ash paragraph. So it's very, very favourable towards Ash. So yeah, if he doesn't go well this year, blame Kays is what I'm saying. Yep. Anyway, the stash options is what we're moving on to. So we mentioned him before, but Finn Callaghan. So he was a good junior, got a run on the wing when he did play. He's just a player that I think needs another year of development before he becomes a reasonable scorer. I don't think the breakout's happening this year in his second year. That's probably an easy thing to bank on as your second year blues, and then your third year breakouts is generally the common trend. But
Incorrect.
What are your thoughts there?
I disagree, and I've already said this so many times on the pod, Heff. The second year isn't a second year blues. It's only when you have an amazing first year that it's likely, someone that we've watched all year play amazing, and then they have the second year, and then the whole competition kind of figures them out. They get more defensive pressure. Yeah. They slightly dip in their second, and then they come back storming in their third. With players that haven't had the opportunity, have had, he had injuries last year. He's also, by the way, coming into the season a little bit back. He had surgery in the off season, so he's kind of coming back now. I think he'd be running now in December and January was the prediction, so he should be back running hopefully. But he's got all the scope to play more games, play a proper role on that wing, maybe get some of that more inside midfield time. I feel like also Tanner Bruin's departure is probably a bit underrated. Like, he had over 20% centre bounces in a number of games, like played a fair bit of footy last year. I think Callaghan actually could take the next step. Was dominant at VFL level in his first few games before getting the call up. I reckon he's a big chance to go real big this year. So he's actually a guy that I would be saying to draft pretty confidently, and maybe not even be that stash, maybe be fieldable this year.
I still think he's a stash just because, I haven't really seen him in this offseason, but he kind of just didn't look like the size for a dominant inside midfielder just yet.
He's a bit, you mean like girthy pipes?
Yeah, girthy-wise, mate.
Kingsley, mate. Kingsley's going to have him in the gym.
We had this big thing on our group chat where Kays would always refer to big-bodied midfielders as tall midfielders, and we're like, no, big-bodied and tall are different. Yeah. We had to kind of explain that because Lachie Neale's a big-bodied midfielder despite being 179 centimetres, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So what you're saying, you need some gym photos of Callaghan.
That's what I mean. That will make my
GWS socials, get them out there.
Yeah, get some gym photos out there.
Callaghan pipes next to Kingsley for comparison if possible.
Because and the thing is as well, they develop, I guess, body type as well, and the type of roles they're going to be playing as well. Like that sometimes happens as well. Like you try to keep a bit of the mass off if they're planning on playing the wing and stuff like that. So,
but you don't think the wing, like he can score well on the wing and get a full season of footy under his belt?
A few things, like if you just look over the trends of wingers in the competition, they're not scoring super highly. Mm-hmm. They're scoring consistently, but not super highly. So not 100 pluses type thing. There's not many out there that actually do it. Like look at someone like Langdon, who's the best winger in the competition, doesn't get anywhere near to be like a decent fantasy option. So it's interesting. It's the only way I kind of think. It's funny that you talk about the second year blues. I think second year blues is definitely like the second year they do progress a lot. But when I'm talking breakouts, I generally think the year that they're most likely to average over 80 as a forward or a defender, or over 90 as a midfielder. That's kind of my thinking. That's what I deem as the breakout. I'm looking at when they can kind of get to that point. More so than just like boosting
almost
their
when
average.
they can be 2G for P.
When you're looking at raw data, like you see guys get 30 in their first season, then 60 in the second season. You're like, 30-point uptick. But then they get 80. It's only a 20-point uptick in the third. But that's when they're becoming a decent, putting up decent numbers.
All right, mate.
You know what I mean?
So, Jesus, mate.
Yeah.
Coming back on the show, and you. I don't know, mate.
I like. We both have our little data focus. That's the thing. I'm, very, very picky about that. Right. But anyway, that's all the kind of ones I've got on the list. Any other options that you want to talk about while we've got you here, Dossie?
Yeah. So I've got a couple. One in particular kind of hits the heartstrings, and honestly, Kays was the first man to be all aboard the Peatling train, but James Peatling for me, big fan of him. Last year came on the scene. He really got an opportunity playing a forward line role, so he was playing that kind of high half forward that we've seen occasionally pop for certain players that can hit the scoreboard as well as rack up, and he was up near stoppages, basically playing as an extra midfielder at times last year. Inconsistency was certainly there.
Yeah.
But were you impressed by that? I remember he had a stretch. There was
there was 3 games at the start.
Yeah, 80, 119 and an 80, and he was kicking multiple goals.
He was kicking bags. Yeah. Then they just kind of shut him down. They're like, well, he's kicking too many goals up forward. Defenders actually started paying attention to him, and then he was gone. That's kind of what it seemed like to me. So in that kind of half forward role, I think you can get off the chain for a while, but it's so easy to shut you down in those roles as well. They just sit a tight marking defender on you and you're gone type thing. Yeah. I liked him the year before. So I don't know if Kays was the first. I had him in my classic team 2 years ago. I liked him the year before he was in defence because he's playing off half back. Like, look how much fantasy role. The good thing about him is he can still, that role could still be there. So I don't love him as a forward if he's playing that forward role. I guess he can pop every now and then if he gets on the end of a few goals. But like I said, they started to work him out pretty closely, I think, towards the end of last year and started to shut him down, and it saw him fade away. But, third year coming into it has shown he can play a fantasy-friendly role in the past and also shown he can put up good scores. There's definitely scope there. Like, there's potential there.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, and especially if he retains that role, coming into another year. Because before that, he was playing half back for GWS.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like he does also have that ability to go inside because that's what he was playing on that half forward line. He was really moving into stoppage. So he's another guy to watch for some midfield time, but I feel like he's not going to he's going to cost you nothing for a draft pick.
Yeah, you'll get him so late.
And he's a flyer that, he's shown an ability. He scores well at VFL level. He's done it in the past kind of thing at the lower levels. So whether he's a guy that can kind of come into his own this year, I'll be one to watch is James Peatling.
I think GWS players like Peatling as well, like they just go under the radar a bit more because there's not that much of a focus on him in the media and stuff like that, and they will slide pretty late. And people forget that he had those 3-4 weeks where he did put up some good scores.
Certainly not a hot name in this fantasy preseason, but I'm looking forward to his year. Toby Bedford was the other one, just coming across from Melbourne. I mentioned him before. I think he's got an ability to potentially spend some time inside. He'd be more of your stash option as well. Let's just see what he can do. Again, like a pick real late in your draft. Maybe even just let him go and see how he goes in the first couple of weeks of the season. But he brings that speed. Look, Bobby Hill's gone too, isn't he?
That was the talk that he replaces him up forward.
Yeah, so he'll probably be that sort of speedy guy. He came out and won the time trial the other day, the 2K time trial. We always like seeing that. So he's a guy I'm just keen to see, coming across from Melbourne, a tough team to break into. Does he have a bit more that he can show us in this lesser GWS team that aren't up there in the premiership contention,
I just see him as one of your very good smaller forwards. That's what I see him as, which so I don't love him for fantasy, but he does have speed. It's whether they choose to utilise that speed elsewhere. He's one I'm not looking at just because we know I used to hate key forwards. Now I'm kind of get back on the key forwards because
you're off the small forwards.
I'm off the small forwards, yeah.
Dossie's just flagging it. He always brings the names to the table. So just keep an eye on Toby Bedford as well. And my final guy that I actually this is more your gut feel. I
love a good gut feel.
Your Dossie feel here.
Yep. What is it, the Manscaped smooth ball call?
It is my Manscaped smooth ball call.
Yep.
Cooper Hamilton. I'm just a
I know nothing about him, so
fan of him.
Tell me.
I honestly don't I didn't know too much about him last year either, but just watching him play did not hit the fantasy scores or did not show anything in the fantasy circuit for us, but just watching the way he goes about his footy, just moves to kind of like those nice places. He played a bit of backline. He's elite endurance, so he's the club record holder, I believe, for the 2K time trial as well.
Oh, wow.
Got that fitness base. Came second to Toby Bedford, so he better come back and take the crown, I think, in the next time trial. But
a few good runners on that side.
yeah, exactly. But I just think the way he played, the way he moved, the way he was getting into the right positions, he wasn't always getting used, but I feel like coming into I think this is only his second year of footy.
Yeah.
He's a guy that stash again. Definitely probably not ready to go this year, but he's one I'm keen to look an eye on.
All right.
Keep an eye on.
I'll
Cooper,
have to take your word for that
Hamilton.
one. Yep. I have no opinion on that one, so I'll take your
Mark
word
it down
for
in your book, mate.
There we go.
Cooper Hamilton.
Any more on that list, or was that it?
That was it. I mean, Jack Buckley coming back from injury as well. I had some interest in him before he unfortunately got injured last year, but he's more of your kind of streamer option. But
All right.
yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, before we move on to the listener questions, just want to thank the gold members each week. Members this week will have received our top 100 defender rankings from Kays and myself. And then there is a third option, which is what our members who have chosen to participate have ranked the players as well. So there's a really good consensus. I think there's quite a few members in there that have actually put this through. So it should even out quite nicely and give you some pretty good ranks. So yeah, they'll be up. They are up now. This podcast is getting recorded in the past, so yeah, it's hard to actually remember when things are coming out. So they're up now. But each week we thank some gold members. So thank you to Peter Cunningham, Adam Burgess, Ben Gardner, Matthew Kelson, Stuart Churton, Odin York, Ian Duncan, Sean Lawson, David Pearce, and Dan Kovacevic. So yeah. Apart from that, we've got a few other resources up there. What do you use when you're doing the podcast? I know you use the Keep League Pod resources. What's your most valuable resource?
Honestly, like as much as have been involved in the show, you know quite well I use the resources regularly as one of my go-to in combination with other ones as well. But I use them mostly for CBAs are my go-to. I like using it to kind of check the previous years and also check specific games. Obviously, there's like a few different options you can use in CBAs. State League scores, huge. Coming in, like you want to look at how players perform, whether that was whether that was kind of like heading into this year or as we start this next season, this 2023 season, checking in, see how my guys like Braydon Preuss and going in the twos and just, relishing the fact that Stewie G's still the coach there. And draftee fantasy scores coming in for Classic and for your Keeper League, obviously, knowing what the rookies averaged in their draft year and coming in and knowing where they're kind of going to sit at AFL level, predicting what they can kind of do is what I really like to use.
The drafty analysis guide's up there as well, which gives you a bit of info on what the players like as well. So that's another good one there to check out if you're either studying your rookies for Classic or looking for people to pick up in keeper leagues. Anyways, enough plugging my own products. There's a link in the description below. If you want to sign up, every dollar that comes from that keeps the podcast going. So thanks heaps for that. But if you can't support that way, that's fine. Just follow us on YouTube or subscribe on YouTube. Follow Twitter, all that sort of stuff. Follow Facebook. Any kind of that, all that kind of stuff really helps us out. So it'd be great if you could, just help us out in those ways if possible. All right, into the listener questions. So the first one comes from @DanK101. Dossie, what are your thoughts on Kieran Briggs as a long-term stash?
Long-term stash, yeah.
He's coming into his 4th or 5th year now, I reckon.
Yeah, I feel like, not for me. I mean, he might come and do all right when Preuss is down or if Flinney goes down as well. I think Flynn's the long-term answer there. And
I think he's the third in line to the ruck and really only used when they're like, break glass in case of emergency type thing.
Agreed, yeah.
I think they like him as like a key, like either they can play key defense and key forward. I think he was drafted as one and plays as the other now or whatever.
I think one thing that we, and I feel like we all got caught into this last year is like, you can always kind of have an idea of like, okay, when this guy retires or when this happens, this guy will pop. But as we found out last year, we were talking the whole year basically about Ned Reeves versus Max Lynch. Yeah. And then all of a sudden in the off-season, they're like, well, actually, we're going to go get a third guy, Lloyd Meek. So it's
that's because Lynch is not serviceable. That's why. They need a backup.
Let's agree to disagree there. But
honestly,
you know what I mean? Though? It's like if they want an upgrade, they'll go get one. Like they might go draft a guy next year that'll replace Briggs. Like,
that's what Preuss was supposed to be anyway. Like I
feel like unless they're a stud, like they're a clear kind of stud, if they're just like that, kind of like the role player or like, they'll fill the void, like you're saying, break glass in case of emergency. I don't think they're worth stashing.
Nah, neither. You get like there's a million Kieran Briggs types out there, so yeah, just grab one the year before and hope it pops. Really. At Simon Evans _76, thoughts on Brent Daniels despite being a forward. There has been talk in the past about midfield time and then injury strikes. If he stays injury free, do you see him consolidating a place in the best 22 and becoming more than just a waiver guy by year's end? Thoughts on Brent Daniels? Can I just jump in quickly, sorry, Dusty, before you answer? Funny little story. On TikTok, you can see who's viewed your profile.
Oh.
Scrolling down the list, none other than Brent Daniels has been looking at the Keeper League pod on TikTok.
Look, I think Brent Daniels is having a breakout year. He's probably the best player in the AFL, and he's going to get all the mid-time in the world and break out massively. Brent Daniels, good on you, mate. Looking forward to a huge year. But in all seriousness, he's got explosive speed coming out everywhere, old Brent Daniels. So I feel like he can kind of have a spot in their midfield, have a spot in their forward line. It depends where Adam Kingsley's going to go.
For me, he's just not the accumulator type. So I just don't think... Like, he might be a serviceable forward at some stage. I know Kay's really liked him, I think, back in the day. And he can put up some decent scores. And you're right, he does get a few stints in the midfield and stuff like that. But I just don't know if he's going to accumulate consistently to be someone that you can put on your field each week. Might be a loophole/streamer guy. That's a bit... that's where he fits in a bit more. I don't know.
Yeah. Probably fits that Richmond type of person to go, if they're going the Richmond game plan route, does fit that mould of being able to kind of burst out a stoppage in the midfield, which they often like having that speedy kind of dynamic.
Yeah, look at Shea Bolton.
Yeah, exactly. Like a Bolton kind of bursting out of midfield. So, yeah, wait and see.
And I'm not sure he's at that level just yet, but we'll wait and see. At Warner Brothers AFL, if GWS become Richmond-esque following the appointment of Pipes Kingsley, who gets that short/Hooley role? Is it Cumming, Whitfield, the Berg, Harry Himmelberg, or anyone else on the radar? I really like Cumming going forward. What do you think? I think Whitfield's going to play up on the wing.
Well, that's where it just depends.
And they're talking about Himmelberg going back in the forward line.
Yeah.
So if I had to back someone now, it'd be Cumming, because he's the one I just don't see his role changing, or at least he's going to be playing the same role as he was last year. That was proven to be fantasy friendly.
Yep.
I reckon Cummings the guy.
Yep, I'm with you there.
At Liam Salad FC, Perryman role and output given with the departure of Taranto Hopper. We kind of talked about that earlier, but I reckon he plays inside.
You reckon?
Yep. Easy. Tick that one off. And
what's that mix then? So you got Kelly, Canelio, Tom Greene.
Does Kelly play outside? I don't know.
We were saying we got Callaghan, you got Whitfield.
Yeah, true. Well, wings rotate a lot in the AFL. Like, cause that's something I watched really closely last year. It was wing attendances. Couldn't see it. We don't get numbers on those. And most teams play 3 to 4 wingmen anyway. Like, they'll rotate on the bench through those guys coming through. So I think you can play three or four on those wings, the way they rotate, and then usually rest somewhere else type thing. My midfield mix is probably Canelio would be up there. I think Perryman's in there. Who am I missing? Oh, Green's going to be your... I reckon those guys are going to be your first 3, I reckon, with Perryman playing your defensive kind of tagger kind of role. I'm probably missing one, though. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head.
Well, yeah, with like Kelly, Canelio.
Yeah, so Green. Kelly could play on the outside. Kelly could
and
play
then we were talking about Toby Greene before.
Well, I think Toby Green's more of the pinch hit type, or if someone gets injured, he goes in.
Yeah. It's funny, though. It's like you've got 2 guys leaving, but I think that's been always the problem at GWS. You got 2 guys leaving, you still got a stacked midfield, realistically.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much changes really in terms of if Tom Greene just gets a huge bump and then Perryman just gets a little bump, that might just be it. There might just be like 4 guys in there.
Yeah, I think Perryman basically does what he did at the end of last year when someone like Taranto and that were injured anyway. And then I think then Greene just kind of fills the other spot in there from Hopper. And Hopper was missing most of the season anyway as well.
I think that I'd be looking out for guys like Toby Greene, Bedford, Brent Daniels, these guys to have those short stints.
A little bump.
Yeah, for sure.
At AFL_FF, are we likely to see Jake Riccardi cement his spot? And if so,
God, he's one that I love.
I know you do. That's why I wanted to bring it up.
I didn't mention him, yeah.
But that's probably because do you see him being fantasy relevant? Like
I do. We need the role. Like it's like, I would have loved to have seen if he got that Himmelberg role last year, or if we see him playing on a wing, they're just stacked in those positions. So if he does play that, I really want to see him in the high half forward. Sorry, not the high centre half forward, just the centre half forward
between the arcs.
Charlie Curnow type role where he just moves right up the ground, kind of clears it out behind him and moves right up the ground. Then you got Hogan behind you. And And I feel like he could play a really good role there. Like, I've always really liked the way he played and just waiting for that breakout. I feel like he got too thick last year. Like,
Maybe that's the issue. Yeah.
I wanted to be that mobile, up the ground guy. He got real girthy on the pipes. So.
He's a strange one because we love him because of his first 4 games ever. And but he kicked bags in all of those. So it's a similar thing that we were talking about before with, what's your boy's name again? I forgot his name now. Peatling. Comes in the side, kicks a few big bags, gets shut down, can't find another trick type thing.
Goes to the twos, gets 200 points.
Plays in defence in the
That's
twos.
what I mean, yeah.
But like, try that at AFL level and look so lost. You know what I mean? I know it's another year, like in terms of his development, but to be honest, I can only see him really as, maybe that centre half forward you're talking about, but I don't know if he's got the kind of talent to be like a Kerno type thing. That's all. So he's not, I think he does cement a spot in the forward line, but I just don't think it's going to be huge for fantasy scoring. That's all.
All right. I'd draft him late.
I drafted him late last year.
Always a big fan.
Yeah, he's definitely one to, like, because that potential is there. Anyways, that's a wrap, Dossie. What do you want to plug? What podcast are you on again?
Oh, yeah, the Pod.
Yep.
Also, shout out to Brent Daniels. I know he's a big fan of the show.
Looks at our TikTok.
Yeah. Just go, if you enjoy your classic as well as your keeper leagues, hit up Pod. Have a listen. We've been piling out the content this pre-season.
And you're out from behind the paywall this year, if you haven't heard.
Yes,
so,
yes, free to air.
Yeah, free to air.
No paywall needed.
Every podcast app, you can imagine that's where it's at.
Hit it up. Hit up some Smug Chicken as well. Heff.
What's Smug Chicken, Dossie?
It's a brand new word game.
Okay.
Heff on the market.
We don't have enough.
We went through. Well, that's it. We went through the Wordle phase. I know Warney was a huge fan in the fantasy community of Wordle, just pumping that up. Yes. But it's Smug Chicken's time. Heff.
So what is Smug Chicken?
It's the time of the chicken. Look, so I don't know if you've heard of AI, artificial intelligence going around. Heff. It's probably going to be big in your school.
I use quite a bit of ChatGPT.
That's what I was going to say. You're going to be
research for. Definitely them. I think a lot of my students already are probably using it. To be honest.
Yes, it is coming in. It's coming in full force this year.
Yep.
But yeah, I guess 2022 we were exposed to a bit of the AI art generation or image generation, which is where you enter text into a program, into an AI art generator, and then it generates 4 images based on the text. We use 2 words to produce an image, and then you've got to guess those 2 words.
I won't give away the answer, but today's one was quite easy, and I think I saw a 98% completion rate.
Yeah, I think it's down to 89% now. We're blowing up, mate. So Elon Dosk,
yep.
Jeff Bezos, blowing up. Going to get that couple of billies and support the program.
Dos Gates. Does that work? I don't know. Anyway, listen to the Pod, play Smug Chicken, but also get around Keeper League Pod on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok at Keeper League Pod on all of those. Say good day to Brent Daniels while you're on our TikTok site. Also get around Manscaped. Use Keeper20 for 20% off and free shipping. Supporting the sponsors supports us. But if you want to support us even more, please sign up as a member and keep us bringing you this podcast each week. All right, that's a wrap, Dossie. Thank you very much for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, mate. See you soon. Bye. Farewell. Goodbye.